It was the kind of winter morning that made your bones ache before you even left the bed. In the small town of Hollow Creek, Massachusetts, snow had been falling for days, thick and relentless, covering the streets in a suffocating blanket of white. Most of the town was still asleep, save for the occasional plow crunching through the untouched snow. Danny Carter rubbed his eyes and looked at his phone. 4:30 a.m., the streetlights outside flickered through the frost-coated windows. Today, he and his three friends, Jesse, Mia, and Harper, were leaving for a weekend getaway in the Berkshires. Cabin rented, gas tank full, snacks packed. It was supposed to be a simple escape from the relentless cold and the stifling monotony of small-town life. Their driver, a cheerful man named Leo, waited in his old black Ford van, cigarette in hand, despite the snow swirling around him. "Morning, kids," he said, his grin too wide for the half-dark street. "Excited for some fresh air?" "Absolutely," Danny replied, stepping into the icy wind. The van's engine rumbled to life, a sound that usually felt reassuring, but today, it hummed like a warning. The town disappeared behind them as the highway stretched toward the mountains. Fog began to creep in, soft at first, curling along the road like a living thing. By the time the van had climbed for an hour, the fog had thickened into a wall, white and oppressive, swallowing headlights and road signs alike. Leo's cheerful tone faded. His hands tightened around the wheel, knuckles white. "Keep the windows closed," he said quietly. "Just don't open them, not even a crack." Danny laughed nervously. "Relax, Leo. It's just fog." But it wasn't. As the van crept through the white void, shadows seemed to shift just beyond the headlights. Mia shivered. "Do you guys feel that?" she asked. "It's like the air is heavier here." Harper scoffed, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "It's cold, that's all." But Danny noticed it too, the faint outline of shapes, moving in the fog, twisting like smoke, just at the edge of sight. And then, a sound, a scraping, like fingernails on metal, echoing through the empty air. "Leo," Danny began, voice tight. "Did you hear that?" The driver's jaw tightened. "I hear it," he said, voice low. "Stay calm. Don't open the windows, please." Jesse, sitting in the back, laughed, trying to mask the fear creeping up his spine. "What's going on? Is this some weird snowstorm thing?" "No," Leo said, his voice trembling despite his attempt to stay calm. "This isn't weather. You don't understand this fog. It's not normal, not here, not ever." Before anyone could respond, the van's headlights flickered and died. Total darkness. The fog was all-encompassing now, thick enough that even the van's outline seemed to dissolve into it. Mia screamed, and Danny fumbled for his phone, only to find there was no signal. None. The van was moving, but the road had vanished. Shapes emerged from the fogtall, impossibly dark silhouettes that stretched higher than any human. They didn't move like people. They glided, impossibly smooth and silent. "Leo, what are those?" Danny whispered, his voice shaking. "I told you," Leo said, voice breaking. "This fog, it shows you things, lies, illusions, sometimes worse. Don't look outside. Don't let it in." But it was too late. Mia, curious or perhaps panicked, cracked her window just slightly. The cold hit her face and then the fog swarmed inside. A presence pressed against her chest, heavy and suffocating. She screamed as the van seemed to tilt and sway, the road now a memory. Dottie reached to grab her, but the air around them thickened, as if the fog had mass. Shapes twisted inside it, forming grotesque faces that disappeared the moment he blinked. He tried to yell, to warn Harper and Jesse, but his voice was swallowed, and then, a silence. The van rolled forward, seemingly on autopilot. Danny turned, hoping to see Leo driving, but the seat was empty. Jesse and Harper, gone. Just him and Mia. The first real scream of terror broke the frozen morning air. and from the fog, something massive moved, taller than any man, darker than the night itself, eyes glowing faintly red. It hovered just beyond the van, silent, waiting. Danny knew. Instinctively, this was not going to end well. Danny's heart pounded like a jackhammer. The van rolled on its own through the fog, silent except for the faint hum of the engine. Mia sat frozen beside him, her face pale, lips trembling. Her eyes were wide, unblinking, as if staring into something Danny couldn't see. Leo, Jesse, Harper. Danny's voice was hoarse, cracking with panic. No answer. The fog pressed against the windows, almost solid, and then it shifted. Faces appeared, dozens of them, pale and screaming silently, pressing against the glass. Danny recoiled. Mia, don't look, don't, but she did, and a scream ripped from her throat, piercing and raw. The faces melted back into the fog as quickly as they had appeared, leaving only an oppressive, suffocating silence. Danny swallowed hard and reached for the door handle. Locked. The van wasn't just moving on its own. It was trapped in a pocket of this fog, a cage with invisible walls. He tried to calm himself. Think logically. This is a hallucination. Stress, cold, adrenaline. But deep down, he knew something was wrong. Minutes or maybe hours passed. Time had lost meaning in the fog. The van swayed slightly, almost imperceptibly, and then a sound came, a soft, dragging shuffle like boots across the snow outside. Danny froze. The sound circled the van, closer, then farther, but always there, waiting. Danny, Mia whispered, her voice trembling. It's watching us. I can feel it. He wanted to argue, but there was no courage left in him. His hands shook as he gripped the dashboard. Then a new terror revealed itself. The radio crackled, static, and then a voice, low, guttural, impossibly close, almost inside Danny's head. You shouldn't be here. Danny's stomach dropped. Who is that? No answer. Only the fog pressing closer, sneaking into the van like a living thing. Mia whimpered. Danny noticed the window she had cracked. Ice had formed instantly along its edges, sealing the tiny opening. But the chill inside felt unnatural, deeper than winter should allow. Then he heard it. Footsteps, not from outside, but from inside the van. They weren't Jesse or Harper. The sound of someone pacing, slow and deliberate. Danny's throat went dry. He fumbled for his phone. Nothing. No signal. No GPS, no help. A shadow fell across the dashboard. Danny turned, heart in his throat. The figure was tall enough to scrape the ceiling and dark, featureless, save for two faint red dots that pulsed like angry coals. Danny screamed. Mia grabbed him, clutching his arm so tightly he thought she might break his bones. Don't move, she whispered. It sees movement. The shadow leaned closer, stretching impossibly, bending at angles no human body could. It tilted its head as if studying them, waiting. Danny's mind raced. The van wasn't on any real road anymore. The fog was thicker than snowstorms he had ever seen, and yet the van glided forward, unhindered. He tried to think back to Leo's warning, don't open the windows. Not even a crack. He realized that window. Mia had opened it. That was how it came inside. Close it, quickly. Danny shouted. Mia scrambled, pressing her frozen hands against the ice. The shadow recoiled for a split second, hissing, almost amused, but it didn't vanish. It lingered, taller, darker, waiting. Then came a sound that made Danny's blood run cold, a low, guttural laugh, a voice that wasn't human, not fully. It echoed around them, deep and resonant, like the fog itself was speaking. You shouldn't be here. The van jerked violently. Danny hit his head on the dashboard. Mia screamed again, and then a movement at the rearview mirror. He flinched, looked up and froze. Jesse's face stared back at him, pale eyes empty, mouth frozen in a silent scream. Danny's vision blurred. Jesse, he whispered. But it wasn't Jesse. Not really. The face distorted, stretched, and then vanished into the fog, leaving only the faint glow of those red eyes. The van accelerated on its own. Danny gripped the wheel, trying to steer, but it was like holding onto a snake, slippery, alive, bending wherever it pleased. The fog pulsed around them. The scraping sounds outside returned, closer now. Something moved along the roof, dragging claws across metal. Mia shook violently. "We're going to die," she sobbed. Danny swallowed hard, forcing himself to think. He remembered the cabin they were supposed to reach. Maybe if we just stay calm, stay inside, it will end. Maybe. Then the fog shifted again, and Danny saw it a road, snow-covered, familiar. The van rolled onto it, as if nothing had happened. Outside, the fog thinned just enough to reveal the mountains in the distance. But the sense of relief was short-lived. When Danny turned to speak to Mia, she was gone. The seat empty. Danny slammed the brakes. The van skidded slightly, snow spraying, but it came to a stop. He called her name, voice cracking. No answer. And then he heard it. A whisper right beside him. "You're next." Danny's hand shook as he fumbled with the van's locks. The empty seat beside him was a cruel reminder. Mia had vanished. One moment she was screaming, gripping his arm. The next, nothing. Only the echo of her last words remained in the foggy air. "You're next." He swallowed hard, fighting the rising panic. The van had somehow returned to the road, though it was no longer the highway they had taken. The snow-dusted road curved sharply into the mountains, flanked by dark pines, whose branches clawed at the gray sky. The fog hung thick, almost alive, curling around the trees like tendrils. Danny's phone buzzed once. A text, from an unknown number. "Stop. You can't escape." He threw the phone across the van. It shattered against the dashboard. The static hum of the van filled the silence, almost mocking him. He forced himself to move. The cabin. They had planned to stay at a small rented cabin near Clearview Lake. Maybe Leo had driven them there. Maybe Mia had gone there too. The van groaned as if resisting him, slowing down on the winding road. Danny's breath came in sharp gasps. Snow sprayed from the tires as the road disappeared under the fog. Then, faintly, through the gray, he saw it. A dim light in the distance. A cabin. Relief washed over him. And for a brief moment, the terror lifted. He parked the van at the snow-packed driveway and stepped out. The cold hit like knives. Every exhale hung in the air, visible, ghostly. But something was wrong. The cabin, though familiar from the listing photos, seemed off. The windows were dark, but shadows moved behind them. The door was slightly ajar. "Hello," Danny called, voice trembling. "Mia, Leah, Jesse, Harper." No answer. Only the wind whistling through the pines, carrying with it a faint, sweet scent like burning sugar. A sound, too soft but distinct. Footsteps crunching in the snow, moving away from him. Danny took a hesitant step toward the cabin. The door creaked open as if pushed by an unseen hand. Inside, the fireplace was cold, the room dark, and the air heavy, suffocating. Every surface was coated in a thin layer of frost, even the furniture. On the floor, he noticed something that made his blood run cold. Footprints. Not his own, not the driver's, not his friend's. Small, uneven, like someone or something was dragging itself. A whisper brushed against his ear. "You shouldn't be here." Danny spun around. Nothing, just the shadows dancing along the walls. He stepped inside, gripping a broken chair for protection. The cabin was quiet, but the feeling of being watched pressed down on him like a physical weight. Then, he heard it. Laughter. Low gurgling, echoing from the far corner. Danny's pulse hammered in his ears as he crept closer. The sound came from the hallway leading to the bedrooms. He could make out shapes moving just beyond vision, tall, twisting shadows that didn't belong to anyone human. "Leo," Danny whispered. "Jesse." "Harper." Silence. Then a door slammed shut somewhere above him, shaking the cabin. Dust fell from the ceiling. He raced toward it, fumbling with the knob. It opened into an empty room, and on the far wall, written in frost, something glimmered. "You are alone." Danny's stomach turned. The van, the road, the fog, everything had led him here, to this place where reality felt wrong, where time seemed to stop. He heard the footsteps. Again, circling him now. Slower, deliberate, like it was savoring the terror it had caused. He spun, clutching the doorframe, trying to find the source. Shadows pressed along the walls, deeper, darker, moving against the light. And then, a shape stepped forward. A human silhouette, or at least it looked human at first. It had the outline of a person, but stretched impossibly tall, limbs bending at strange angles. Its eyes glowed faint red, and its mouth opened impossibly wide in a scream that Danny felt in his chest rather than heard. Danny stumbled back, hitting the wall. The creature advanced, gliding without sound, and Danny realized it was not one creature. Thousands of them were in the fog outside, the cabin walls nothing but thin paper to their presence. The shadows of his friends, Jesse, Harper, even Mia flickered briefly in the corners, twisted and broken, eyes empty, mouths frozen in silent screams. Danny screamed, backing into the corner. The creature leaned closer, the red glow of its eyes intensifying. He could feel it breathing cold, rancid, wrong. Then a sudden thought struck him. Leo's warning, "Don't open the windows. Don't let it in." He ran to the nearest window, and to his horror, frost had formed in thick sheets. Someone or something had opened it from the outside. The fog seeped in like water through cracks, curling into the room, alive, hungry. Danny felt it touch him, a whisper inside his mind, "You're next." He bolted through the cabin, searching for anything that could help. The door to the basement appeared at the far end of the living room. For some reason, Danny knew he had to go down there. Heart racing, he descended the creaking stairs into darkness, feeling the walls close in at the bottom. The basement stretched farther than it should have, impossibly long. Shadows moved along the walls, following him. The smell of burning sugar grew stronger. Danny's flashlight flickered, and in the brief illumination, he saw something that made his blood freeze. A wall covered in photographs. Faces he knew, his friends, neighbors, strangers pinned in rows. Eyes scratched out, mouths open in silent screams. A soft, mocking voice came from the far corner. "Welcome, you belong now." Danny spun, but there was nothing there. Only fog, curling, waiting, alive, and then the lights went out completely. Darkness swallowed Danny. The flashlight in his hand flickered weakly, as though struggling against some unseen force. The air in the basement was thick, metallic, and cold, so cold it burned his lungs with every breath. He took a tentative step forward. The photographs on the wall stared back at him, eyes empty, faces twisted in expressions of horror. Some were familiar friends, neighbors, even strangers, from Hollow Creek, but some were impossible. Faces that looked like they had been stretched, broken, and reassembled in ways no human could survive. A soft hiss echoed behind him. Danny spun, flashlight darting across the basement. Shadows danced along the walls, twisting in impossible shapes. The fog from above had crept down the stairs, pulling at his feet, curling around his ankles like a living thing. He stumbled backward, heart hammering. Something moved in the corner, a figure, tall and thin, faceless, limbs bending wrong. The red glow of its eyes cut through the darkness. Danny froze, realizing the creature wasn't alone. Thousands of shapes lurked in the shadows, just out of sight, watching, waiting. The voice whispered again, right in his ear, "You cannot leave, not yet." Danny spun and ran down the narrow corridor of the basement. His foot hit something cold and wet. He looked down, blood, dark and thick, forming patterns that looked disturbingly like words. Alone. The walls shifted, elongating and bending. Danny felt the basement stretching impossibly, doors appearing and disappearing as he ran. Behind him, the creatures moved faster now, gliding silently, their red eyes never blinking. He tried to scream, but his voice was swallowed by the thick, living fog. Then, a sound he recognized, Mia's voice, faint and broken, calling his name. Danny stopped, hope flaring. "Mia, where are you?" The voice replied, closer this time. "Didani, help me." He sprinted toward it, only to find a door that wasn't there before. Pushing it open, he entered a small room bare, except for a chair in the center. And tied to it was Mia. Her eyes were wide with terror, her clothes soaked, frost forming along her hairline. "Mia, I've got you," Danny shouted. He ran to untie her, fumbling with the ropes as the fog crept under the door. The red figures appeared along the walls, tall and twisting, surrounding them. The whispering voice filled the room, closer, louder. "You should have listened." Mia shivered violently. "Danny, it's inside me." Before he could ask, her body convulsed. Shadows erupted from her skin, crawling like black liquid, writhing up her arms and legs. Danny screamed, finally realizing this wasn't just fog, it was possession. Whatever had taken the fog into the van now had her. He pulled her into his arms, desperate. "Mia, fight it, fight it." The shadows hissed, whispering in 1,000 voices, and Mia's own voice became drowned among them. Danny had no choice. He grabbed a heavy pipe from the corner and struck the wall near the shadows, hoping to break their focus. The room trembled, the shadows recoiling momentarily, giving him a chance to drag Mia toward the basement stairs. But the basement had changed again. The stairs now led upward, but the door above seemed miles away. The ceiling stretched impossibly high, the walls curving like the inside of a nightmare. Danny's arms ached as he climbed, dragging Mia through the fog that now clawed at him like a living thing. Suddenly, the whispers became screams, deafening and overlapping. The creatures surged forward, massing into a single, towering shape that Danny recognized instantly, the shadow from the road, now magnified, limbs bending like broken branches, eyes glowing red, mouth stretching impossibly wide in a silent scream. Danny stumbled, nearly losing his grip on Mia. We have to get out," he yelled. The shadow leaned closer, the fog swirling around it like a storm. The ground beneath Danny trembled, and then, in a moment that froze him, the shadow extended a single elongated hand and touched Mia's face. Her scream cut through the basement, high-pitched and horrifying. She went limp. Danny clutched her desperately, but when he looked up, the shadow had retreated, vanishing into the fog, leaving only the faint echo of its laughter. Danny's mind raced. The basement wasn't just a trap, it was feeding on fear, warping reality, twisting time. He had to get to the surface. He had to escape. But the van, the fog, Mia, everything was connected. A faint light appeared at the top of the stairs. Danny lifted Mia, pushing himself forward. Every step felt like moving through water, the fog thickening, alive, resisting them. The whispers followed, mocking, relentless. "You will never leave." And then, finally, he reached the top, the cabin's main floor. The fog swirled at the windows, pulsating, hungry. But for now, it held back, as if testing him. Danny realized with horror that the real nightmare had only begun. Danny stumbled across the main floor of the cabin. Mia slumped in his arms. Her body was limp, but she was still breathing. He sank onto a wooden chair, the weight of exhaustion pressing down on him like snow. The fog outside twisted and writhed, pressing against the windows, teasing, almost sentient. He couldn't stay here. Not yet. He had to understand what had happened. Why the fog was alive. why it had claimed me and, possibly his friends. The cabin itself seemed alive. Floorboards groaned under his weight. Shadows darted just beyond vision, lingering, watching. On a nearby table, Danny noticed a dusty journal, its leather cracked and worn. He opened it. The first entry was dated over 50 years ago. The fog comes from the lake. It feeds on fear and pain. Those who enter without respect do not leave. The shadows are not ghosts, not spirits, they are something older, something that dwells between reality and nightmare. Danny's hands trembled as he flipped through the pages. Names were listed: locals, travelers, even a few from Boston and New York. Dates marked disappearances, deaths, or insanity. In one entry, a family vanished entirely. Only the youngest child returned, mute, eyes wide with terror, never speaking. Again, the journal described the fog as a living entity, drawn to strong emotions, anger, fear, sorrow. It lured people into the mountains, into Clearview Lake's cursed cabin, where time bent and reality shifted. Once inside, the fog could manipulate perceptions, twist space, and feed on the mind. Danny's stomach turned. This is what happened to us. This is what's happening now. A low hiss sounded behind him. He spun. The shadows were moving, creeping along the floorboards, gathering in corners. The fog had seeped into the cabin through cracks and broken windows. It coiled like black smoke, searching Mia. Danny whispered, shaking her gently. She stirred, but didn't wake. A strange black sheen crawled across her arms, the same shadow that had touched her in the basement. Danny knew he had to act. The journal mentioned a method, vague but clear. Fear could be used against the fog. Focused thought, defiance, refusal to succumb. But he wasn't sure if he could do it. Not with Mia's life in the balance. The first attack came without warning. The shadows erupted from the corners, slamming against the walls, floorboards splitting under the pressure. The cabin shook violently. Danny gripped the chair, holding Mia, his knuckles white. And then, he heard it. A voice that was not his own. Not Mia's. Not the shadows. Clear, commanding, terrifying. You cannot save her. None of you can leave. Danny's mind screamed. He had to move. The journal mentioned a cellar hatch beneath the fireplace, a passage that led to the original foundations of the cabin. Perhaps there was a way to banish the fog or at least escape. He dragged Mia to the fireplace. Behind the mantel, frost coated the edges of a hidden panel. With shaking hands he pried it open, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. The cold hit him immediately, deeper than any winter air. Hold on, Mia. I won't let it take you, he whispered. The descent was slow. Every step seemed to stretch time. Whispers followed him down, echoing through the stone walls. Voices of the lost, pleading, screaming. Finally, they reached the bottom, a cavern-like space beneath the cabin, walls glistening with condensation. Water dripped from the ceiling. Shadows moved along the stone, alive, writhing, and in the center, a pool of black water, clear only in its unnatural reflection of red light from the shadows. Above, Danny realized with horror, this was the heart of the fog, its origin, its source. The fog feeding, growing, waiting. The shadows surged, clawing toward him. Danny shouted at them, focusing all his fear and anger. You will not have her. You will not take us. For a moment, the shadows recoiled, screeching, writhing violently. The red light dimmed. Danny could feel the fog resisting, fighting. Then, a whisper came, soft, almost human. You cannot destroy what has always been. Danny knew he couldn't fight it alone. He had to find the others, or at least find a way to protect Mia until help or some miracle came. He clutched her to his chest and started searching the cavern, stepping carefully, listening to the echoes. Somewhere in the darkness, a soft, dragging sound hinted at Jesse or Harper, but the fog was relentless. Every step forward felt like moving through water. The shadows followed, testing him, waiting for him to falter. And then he heard Mia whisper, barely audible, "Danny, it's in my head. I see them." Danny froze. The shadows had not just touched her, they were inside her. He had no idea how much of Mia was left, or how long she could fight before the fog claimed her completely. He whispered to himself, almost praying, "We're going to survive. Somehow, we have to survive." And then, from the depths of the cavern, a scream louder, more piercing than any before. Danny realized with terror it was Mia's, but it was different, hollow, distant. He ran toward the sound, the shadows tightening around them, and as they moved deeper, the red glow intensified, bathing the cavern in unholy light. Danny knew, with sinking certainty, that whatever awaited them at the bottom of the cavern would change everything. Danny's lungs burned as he carried Mia. Deeper into the cavern, the shadows pressed close, whispering and hissing, their voices a twisted chorus of the lost and the damned. The pool of black water glimmered faintly ahead, red reflections pulsing across the stone walls. The fog felt alive beneath the ceiling, coiling like a serpent ready to strike. He set Mia down gently on the wet stone floor. Her eyes fluttered open, glassy and distant. Her voice was faint, almost foreign. "It's watching, Danny." Inside me, Danny's heart sank. The shadows weren't just outside, they were in her, in him, in the cavern itself. The journal's warnings from earlier echoed in his mind. Fear feeds it. Defiance may repel it. Briefly, he took a deep breath, focusing all his fear, anger, and desperation into one thought. "I will not lose you, Mia. Not now, not ever." The shadows recoiled slightly, as if tasting the defiance in his mind. The red glow from the pool brightened, revealing shapes he hadn't seen before, hundreds of figures rising from the black water, faces frozen in silent screams, hands reaching toward him. The pool was not water at all, it was the essence of the fog itself, a living, sentient mass. Danny grabbed Mia's hand. "We have to move. We have to stop it." The cavern walls trembled, cracks spiderwebbed across the stone, frost forming, where no cold should exist. The shadows lunged, faster this time. Danny swung a jagged piece of stone at them, but it passed through, dissolving like smoke. A scream echoed above a human scream, but distorted, as if warped by layers of terror. Danny realized it was Jesse, and then Harper. Their voices intertwined, calling for help, for escape, but distant, as if trapped inside the fog itself. Danny staggered, pulling Mia toward the pool. The journal had hinted at the origin. The pool was the heart. Destroy it, and the fog might lose its grip or at least weaken. But approaching it meant risking everything. The shadows swarmed, lashing out. Mia cried out, black tendrils writhing along her arms, climbing toward her face. Danny screamed, grabbing her and shaking her gently. "Fight it, Mia, fight it." Her eyes flickered with recognition, and she let out a hoarse, ragged whisper. I'm trying." Danny's fear turned to desperation. He plunged his hands into the black water, icy and alive. It lashed against him, tendrils wrapping around his wrists, pulling him down. The shadows hissed in fury, the red glow blinding. Every instinct screamed to pull back, but he focused on Mia, on survival, on defiance. He heard a voice, distinct from the others, booming inside his mind. "Fools, you cannot touch what is eternal." Danny gritted his teeth, digging his hands deeper into the viscous blackness. The shadows screamed, a deafening, bone-rattling cacophony. The cavern trembled violently. Mia clung to him, shivering, whispering incomprehensible words, a mixture of fear and resistance. And then, suddenly, the black water recoiled, pulling back like a wave retreating from a rock. The shadows shrieked and writhed, hissing, screaming, clawing at the edges of the cavern. The red glow dimmed, flickering. Danny staggered backward, dragging Mia with him. She coughed, shivering violently, black residue falling from her skin. Her eyes cleared slightly, a faint light returning. For a moment, Danny thought they had one, but then the cavern groaned, the walls shook, and from the black water, a figure emerged larger than anything he had seen before, its shape twisting and bending impossibly. The red eyes burned brighter than before, and its mouth stretched in a silent, monstrous scream. It was the fog made flesh. Danny realized, with crushing horror, that this was not the end. It had been testing them, preparing them, and now, it would finish what it had started. Mia grabbed his arm, weak but determined. "We can't fight it. Not together. You have to go. Without me." Danny shook his head violently. "No, I'm not leaving you." The creature advanced, tendrils of fog and shadow extending, reaching for them. The cavern trembled, as if alive. Danny knew she was right. Staying together might condemn them both. He forced himself to make the hardest decision of his life. "Mia, run, now." Mia hesitated, tears streaming down her face. The shadow loomed closer. With a final, desperate look, she nodded, turning and sprinting toward the narrow passage he had come through. Danny stayed behind, heart hammering, body trembling. He faced the entity alone. The shadows shrieked and lunged. Every instinct screamed to flee, but he planted his feet, focusing all his defiance. Every ounce of fear transformed into courage. For the first time, the fog hesitated. Danny's heart pounded like a drum in his chest. The cavern shook violently, stones cracking under the weight of the entity before him. The fog-formed creature loomed impossibly tall, limbs bending at unnatural angles, eyes glowing red like coals from another world. Its mouth opened wide not to speak, but to feed. A low, rasping whisper filled the cavern, penetrating Danny's skull. "You cannot escape what has always been." He gritted his teeth, focusing on the one thing keeping him tethered. Mia, her desperate run toward the passage, gave him purpose. He could not fail her, not now, not ever. The shadows lunged, writhing around his legs, pulling at his clothes, freezing him in place. Panic clawed at his mind, but Danny forced himself to focus. He remembered the journal, the one hint that might save him. Fear was the fuel of this entity, but defiance could slow it down. Danny lifted a piece of broken stone from the cavern floor, striking it against the ground. Sparks flew, and for a fleeting moment, the shadows recoiled. He screamed, not in terror, but in defiance. "I am not afraid of you." The cavern trembled violently. The creature let out a low, echoing hiss, the walls quivering under its power. Shadows swirled violently around him, black tendrils lashing at his arms and legs, yet Danny held his ground. With every ounce of willpower, he pressed forward toward the pool of black water. A sudden surge of movement caught his eye. Mia. She had reached the passage but had stopped, turning to look back at him. Her face was pale, streaked with tears and soot. For a heartbeat, they locked eyes. She mouthed the words, "You can do this." Danny's resolve hardened. He plunged his hands into the viscous black pool again, icy tendrils lashing around him, wrapping tightly. The fog shrieked, in 1,000 overlapping voices, echoing through the cavern, bending time and space around him. Pain shot through his arms, but he refused to release his grip. From the depths of the pool, the entity's true form began to emerge. It wasn't just fog, it was a mass of every fear, every nightmare ever trapped within Clearview Lake. Faces of past victims twisted in torment, hands reaching outward, eyes screaming silently. Danny realized with horror, it had learned from every soul it consumed. It was more intelligent, more cruel than he had imagined. Suddenly, a hand shot out from the mass of shadows, wrapping around his wrist. Danny screamed, but focused, summoning all his courage. With a mighty pull, he yanked the tendril from the pool, breaking it back into the black water. It hissed, shrieking in fury. The creature advanced, and Danny noticed something a shimmer along the far wall. An old mural, faded and cracked, barely visible beneath layers of frost. The journal had mentioned a symbol etched by the cabin's original founders, a mark meant to contain the fog. Danny scrambled toward it, dragging his shaking body through the fog's resistance. Red light pulsed faster now, shadows slamming against him, testing him, whispering, laughing. He reached the mural, pressed his hands against the ancient etchings, and shouted, "I command you to leave." The cavern exploded in a deafening roar. The shadows recoiled violently, and the black water surged backward, churning, thrashing. The fog screamed, the sound piercing Danny's mind, clawing at his sanity. He fell to his knees, focusing every thought on Mia, on life, on survival, then silence. The fog shrank back, dissolving into nothingness, the red glow fading. The cavern walls steadied, the tremors stopped. Danny slumped to the ground, trembling, soaked in icy water and sweat. He turned to the passage. Mia was there, waiting, her eyes wide with relief. Danny crawled to her, grabbing her hand, holding on tightly. We made it," he whispered, voice hoarse, almost disbelieving. But as they began to climb the stairs, Danny noticed movement behind them. Shadows lingered in the corners, faint and distant, watching. The fog was weakened but not gone. Somewhere in the mountains, it waited, patient, alive. Eternal dot. And Danny realized the hardest truth of all. Survival didn't mean safety. The fog would return. It always returned. He held Mia close as they stepped into the cabin's main floor. Outside, the storm had subsided. The first light of dawn broke through the trees, pale and cold. For a brief moment, hope flickered, but in the wind, Danny thought he heard it again, a whisper, almost inaudible, crawling through the trees. Not yet. And he knew, deep down, their nightmare was far from over. Danny and Mia stumbled out of the cabin, the early morning light cutting weakly through the mist that clung to the mountainside. The air was crisp, cold, and deceptively calm after the horrors below. For a brief moment, the nightmare seemed behind them, but Danny knew better. The fog might have been weakened, but it wasn't gone. Its whispers lingered in the wind, faint, but insistent, curling through the pines like smoke. Every shadow in the trees seemed to watch, waiting. Danny helped Mia down the rocky trail, every step a struggle. Her body trembled, exhausted from the possession and the cold. They had to reach the road, had to get to safety before the fog regrouped. Suddenly, the ground beneath them quivered. Danny froze. The rocks ahead shifted unnaturally, forming shapes, fingers of stone that reached toward them. The fog was retreating, but it left traces behind. Traps, echoes of its power. Small pockets where reality bent and twisted. Mia gasped. "It's still here." Danny nodded grimly. "It never leaves. Not really. We need to keep moving. We can't look back." Hours passed. The mountains grew steeper, shadows longer. The road they sought remained elusive. Danny noticed strange carvings in the rock symbols, similar to the ones in the cabin mural. The symbols glowed faintly in the half-light, pulsing like a heartbeat. He paused, brushing frost from the etchings. Their wards, protective symbols. Whoever made them, they knew about the fog. Mia's voice shook. Who? Why did no one warn anyone? Danny swallowed. The journal had hinted at this. Generations of locals had known about the fog, but kept its secret hidden. Perhaps they feared it. Perhaps they revered it. But Danny realized something darker. The fog wasn't just a curse. It was ancient, predating the settlement of these mountains. It had been feeding, waiting, and growing in the shadows long before humans arrived. The whispering came again, carried on the wind. "You cannot escape." Danny's stomach turned. He had hoped the fog's reach was limited to the cabin and the lake, but now he knew it followed them, tracking their fear. Every panic-filled heartbeat, every doubt, fed it. They finally glimpsed a road cutting through the trees, a ribbon of asphalt, half hidden in frost and fog. Relief surged through them, but it was short-lived. Shapes moved along the edge of the tree line, just at the corner of vision. Shadows that mimicked human forms, but too tall, too thin, moving with unnatural grace. One stepped into the road, a figure wrapped in black mist, eyes glowing red, its head tilted unnaturally, like it was studying them. Danny grabbed Mia's hand, dragging her forward. Run. They sprinted toward the road, lungs burning, frost biting through their clothes. Behind them, the whispering escalated into screaming, echoing through the mountains. The fog surged in waves, twisting the tree line, forming walls, barriers trying to separate them. Danny realized with growing dread that the fog was evolving. It had learned from their previous confrontation. It could manipulate terrain, twist perception, and strike at their minds. As they neared the road, Mia stumbled, catching herself on a boulder. The fog reacted instantly. A tendril of black mist shot toward her, wrapping around her ankle. Danny yanked her free, striking the mass with a rock. It hissed, recoiling, but it was relentless. Finally, they reached a curve in the road where the fog thinned. The distant sound of a car engine reached their ears. Danny waved frantically, hope surging. But then the fog thickened behind them, rising like a wall. And from within it, a shape emerged, a colossal, twisted figure, limbs bending in impossible angles, eyes glowing like molten rubies. The whispering voice, louder than ever, filled their minds. You cannot leave. This mountain is ours. Danny realized the horrifying truth. Escaping the cabin had not ended the nightmare. The fog had followed them, and the mountain itself had become part of the entity. They weren't running from a storm, they were running from something eternal. Something that had waited centuries for prey. Brave or foolish enough to confront it. Mia clutched his arm. What? What do we do? Danny gritted his teeth, eyes scanning the road. A small bridge lay ahead, crossing a frozen river. If they could just reach it. Perhaps the fog's hold weakened over open water. It was a gamble, but the only chance. They had Dot with a nod. Danny pulled Mia forward. Hold on. We run together. Whatever happens, we survive. The shadow surged forward, faster than the eye could follow, its form splitting and reforming, adapting to their movements. Danny and Mia sprinted, hearts hammering, into the unknown, toward the bridge, toward whatever chance of freedom remained. But the mountain had one final secret, and it was waiting for them at the river's edge. Danny's lungs burned with every step. Frost bit through his clothes, but he barely noticed. The frozen river ahead was their only hope, a narrow ribbon of ice and water glowing pale under the morning light. Beyond it, the forest thinned open. Space, a chance to escape the fog's reach. If only for a moment. The shadows surged behind them, a towering mass of black mist and twisted limbs, red eyes glowing like coals in the fog. Its whispers clawed at their minds, voices overlapping in a deafening chorus. You cannot leave. You will never escape. Danny gripped Mia's hand tightly. One step at a time. Keep moving. Don't look back. They ran across the snow-covered trail, broken branches snapping beneath their feet. The fog lashed out, tendrils reaching, wrapping around trees, freezing the bark, sending shards of ice flying toward them. Mia screamed as one tendril grazed her shoulder, but Danny yanked her forward, ignoring the burning cold that numbed his hands. Finally, they reached the edge of the river. The ice groaned beneath their weight, thin in some spots, but the open water was their salvation. Danny paused, scanning the bank. The shadow followed, and for the first time, it hesitated at the river's edge. Water seemed to repel it, a thin boundary that it could not fully cross. Mia collapsed against him. Danny, I don't know if I can. Danny shook her gently. You can. We're almost free. Just a little further. They stepped onto the ice. The fog surged against them, black tendrils lashing across the frozen surface. But Danny pushed forward, forcing Mia to move with him. The ice cracked in places, water seeping through, and the shadow hissed in frustration. Then it happened. The Water before them rippled unnaturally. From its depths, the fog formed into a massive humanoid shape, more horrifying than anything they had seen. Its mouth opened impossibly wide, and from it, a scream that sounded like every person the fog had ever claimed. The ice beneath them trembled. Danny realized they had only one chance. They needed to reach the far bank before the ice gave way entirely. He tightened his grip on Mia. Run. They sprinted, the ice cracking loudly under their feet. The shadow lashed again, tendrils sweeping toward them. Mia stumbled, nearly falling into the icy water. Danny yanked her up, pulling her with all his strength. A tendril caught his ankle, and he yelped, kicking violently. The fog recoiled, shrieking, and he pushed forward, dragging Mia along. Step by step, agonizingly slow, they neared the far bank. Just as they reached the riverbank, the ice beneath them gave way. Water surged, freezing cold, and the shadow erupted from the river like a living wave. It tried to pull them back, tendrils wrapping around Danny's arms. Mia's legs. Danny screamed, focusing all his remaining energy. He remembered the symbols from the cabin mural, the journal's advice about defiance and focus. With a primal yell, he slammed his hands together and shouted, "I am not afraid. I will survive." The shadow froze, the tendrils flailing, the red glow dimming. It shrieked, a sound that pierced Danny's mind and soul, before recoiling back into the river. Slowly, the fog dissipated, curling away like smoke in the wind. The red eyes vanished. The whispers faded. Danny collapsed onto the snow, shivering violently. Mia clung to him, exhausted, her eyes wide, but alive. For a brief moment, there was silence real, silence broken only by the distant sound of the wind through the pines. But even in the quiet, Danny couldn't shake the feeling that something remained. The river had not destroyed the fog entirely. It had only been repelled. Temporarily. Mia whispered, trembling. "Danny, is it gone?" Danny hugged her tightly, teeth chattering. "I don't know, but we survived. That's all that matters right now." Behind them, from the shadows of the forest, a faint whisper carried on the wind. "This is not over. Not ever." Danny's stomach sank. He knew she was right. The fog was ancient, patient, and eternal. And somewhere in the mountains, it was already waiting. The wind howled through the pines as Danny and Mia stumbled through the snow-covered forest. The river behind them was calm now, but the memory of the fog's red-eyed wrath lingered in every shadow. They had survived. But Danny knew in his gut that the nightmare wasn't over. The journal from the cabin had hinted at something buried deep in the mountains, something older than the fog itself. Danny realized they had to confront it at its source if they ever hoped to truly escape. "Do you really think we can end this?" Mia's voice trembled, but there was a steely edge beneath the fear. Danny shook his head slowly. "I don't know, but we have to try. We can't just run forever." Hours later, they reached the peak of a jagged ridge. Below, the mountains opened into a hidden valley, shrouded in perpetual mist. The fog pulsed within it, denser than anything they had seen, and at its center, a towering spire of black water rose like a dark cathedral. Red eyes glittered within, hundreds of them, watching, judging, feeding. Danny swallowed hard. That's it. That's its heart. That's where it comes from. The fog surged, sensing them, reaching toward the ridge with impossibly long tendrils. Danny grabbed Mia's hand. "We need to descend, carefully, and we need to stay together." As they moved down the ridge, the fog's whispers filled their minds. It mocked them, showing visions of their worst fears, friends lost, endless winter, drowning in black water, trapped forever. Danny's knees buckled under the psychological weight, but he forced himself onward, repeating the mantra from the journal, "Fear feeds it. Defiance may stop it." Finally, they reached the valley floor. The spire of black water loomed before them, tendrils writhing like living snakes. Danny felt the air thicken. Each breath burned, heavy with the fog's malevolence. A voice boomed from the spire. "You dare challenge me?" It was everywhere, the fog, the whispers, the valley itself. Danny felt his mind bending under the pressure. He turned to Mia. "We need to touch it. We need to end this." Mia nodded, determination flashing in her eyes. Together, they stepped forward. The fog lashed at them, but Danny focused every ounce of courage, every shred of defiance, and pushed through. The spire reacted instantly. Waves of black mist surged, tendrils clawing at their bodies. Mia screamed as a tendril wrapped around her arm. Danny yanked her free, diving into the base of the spire. Inside, the black water was alive, swirling with the images of every soul it had consumed over centuries. Danny realized the truth. This fog was not just a curse, it was a sentient entity, a collector of fear and death, feeding on humanity's worst emotions for centuries. He looked at Mia. "We have to confront it together." They joined hands, placing their palms on the black water. The fog surged violently, shrieking in voices both human and inhuman. Memories of lost friends, of terror in the cabin, flooded their minds. But Danny focused, refusing to let the fear control him. Mia mirrored his defiance. A blinding light erupted from their hands, pure and searing. The spire trembled, tendrils recoiling. The fog's shrieks became a cacophony of rage and confusion. The black water churned violently, then began to collapse, inward, sucking the mist into itself. Danny felt himself being drawn toward the spire, but he held Mia tight. With one final, unified effort, they pushed against the fog with every ounce of will. The spire cracked, splintering in slow motion, and then shattered completely. The fog collapsed, writhing and screaming, retreating into nothingness. The valley fell silent. For the first time in centuries, the mist was gone. The red-eyed entity was gone. The mountains were still. Danny and Mia collapsed, exhausted beyond belief. Outside the valley, sunlight broke through the clouds. The snow gleamed gold and white. They were alive. But as Danny looked toward the horizon, he saw something that made his blood run cold. A single red eye, faint but unmistakable, watching from the ridge above. He whispered to Mia, voice trembling, "It's not over. Not really. It never is." Mia squeezed his hand, silently acknowledging the truth. They had survived the fog's wrath, defeated it for now, but some ancient things never truly died. The mountains held secrets that even time could not erase. The wind whispered through the pines, faintly, almost playfully, as if mocking them. This is only the beginning. Danny and Mia turned away from the valley, knowing they could never truly forget the horrors of Clearview Mountain, and somewhere deep, in the shadows, the fog waited, patient, eternal, hungry.